It will be 30 years in November since a Charleston cab driver disappeared, never to be seen or heard from again. His bloody cab found abandoned over a hill, but there's never been any answers on what exactly happened to Bobby Adams.
Tonight, reporter Leslie Rubin has more on why police say this mystery could be solved if the right person decides to step up.
The investigation starting on Twilight Drive in Charleston. It was November 30th, 1991. Police found an abandoned and bloodied C&H taxi cab, but the driver, Bobby Adams, had simply vanished. Now, just shy of 3 decades later, we're opening up this case in this latest Eyewitness News Investigates Cold Cases.
You know, not knowing where he is, that's the part that hurts.
That was 1991, and that was Bobby Adams's dad, still driving a C&H taxi cab just like his son, who at the time had been missing for 3 weeks.
I hate to think that he's dead, but, you know, under the circumstances, I can't think of anything else. He wouldn't have stayed away this long.
A lot has changed in the 3 decades since that interview, but one thing hasn't. Bobby Adams is still missing.
It is a very bizarre case.
The 31-year-old was last seen driving the cab on Washington Street East around 4 o'clock in the morning that Saturday. By 5 o'clock that evening, a puzzling discovery by a neighbor.
Adams' cab was discovered late Saturday afternoon in a wooded area off Twilight Drive. A parking light was broken. The other damage occurred as it was towed from an embankment. A large pool of blood covered the rear floor and seat. His colleagues at C&H are at a loss to explain what happened.
I think it's a shame that a man can't go out and make a living without getting shot or cut up.
But at the time, police didn't know if the blood came from Adams or someone else.
We kind of even weren't sure if he was the victim or maybe even the suspect.
Right. At that time, you had no clue because you have the cab, you have the blood, and no one around it.
Adams was just a little more than 5 feet tall and weighed only 110 pounds. Police had little to go on, but did release that Adams was seen that morning with a white man with medium-length blonde hair who was between 35 and 40 years old.
We don't know at this point whether that was a fare, a friend, or whatever. It could have been anything.
That person never came forward.
Police putting out a nationwide search for Adams. They used dogs and dragged the Elk River from boats the next day, searching for clues that never came.
A woman has called C&H several times with tips, but she refuses to identify herself.
Cab drivers across the capital city were shaken.
You can feel the tension in the air from all the drivers.
Police did learn some about Adams. He was married and had children who lived in Huntington. In the trunk of his cab, police found Christmas presents for them. Investigators also learned he had been making trips out of state, driving the cab.
To New Jersey, New York area. Unknown why he was taking those trips. But we know he was getting paid to take those trips, and he was in the cab.
A break in the case coming when the blood found in the cab came back matching Adams's blood type. But police have never said if it was indeed his or determined how it got there.
The amount of blood that was found inside the taxi cab, they felt, and I felt, that no one could survive that.
Police have been flooded with stories and rumors about Adams, even receiving tips in the last 5 years.
There's people that are witnesses in this case or gave statements in this case or associated with this case that are still living in Charleston.
Callers have claimed he's still alive. Others swear he's been murdered. But police are confident someone knows the truth and could lead them to a solid conclusion.
I strongly feel that there's people still living here in Charleston that have information or even their own theory of what happened to Bobby Adams, and we wish they'd call in.
We've got much more on this story right now on our website, WCHSTV.com. And our special web extras, you can see all of our stories from deep inside the WCHS archives. If you've got a story you'd like to see covered, email coldcases@WCHSTV.com. Reporting in the studio, Leslie Rubin, Eyewitness News. Rick, the case is being reopened with the hopes that advancements in DNA technology and a fresh set of eyes from detectives could crack this cold case that's haunted so many for so long. Tonight in this Eyewitness News Investigates Cold Case Files, we're digging into the murder of Linda Sharp, the only unsolved murder investigation for the Putnam County Sheriff's Office.
35 years of dead ends and unanswered questions now lie in the hands of Lieutenant Chad Weaver.
The initial investigation case notes is that there wasn't any type of sexual assault. It was just, honestly, it was an execution style murder.
He knows it will take a bombshell piece of new information to finally close the cold case murder of 28-year-old Linda Sharp.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But he's ready to make it happen.
Trying to put myself in the mindset of 35 years ago. This is fresh. Somebody may have been afraid or unwilling to come and talk to investigators at the time.
The woman's body was discovered 85 feet down a steep hillside along the ramp leading from I-64 to Route 35.
Executed on the side of the interstate with a large caliber pistol, Sharp was shot twice in the head. There was a large pool of blood near the guardrail and indications she was killed there and dragged down the hill. 2 truck drivers spotted the body in the early morning of March 20th, 1986.
We received a call to the Sheriff's Department this morning approximately 7:30. 2 truck drivers here that drive lumber trucks, they stopped at 84 Lumber Company. They found the body and called us.
There's much investigators don't know about what happened to Sharp, but they do know some. The medical examiner at the time said she died around 5 a.m. Investigators know she was last seen alive between 2 and 4 o'clock that morning at the nearby 76 truck stop, and she was with 2 men.
There were some witnesses there during the initial investigation that did talk, but we also know that there's a possibility that there was other witnesses there at well that, again, maybe didn't want to talk with investigators at the time, but maybe now they're at a place where they can do that.
Witnesses were able to describe the men she was last seen with, leading to these 2 sketches. One wore a small Harley-Davidson hat. They described him as dirty, in his mid-20s with long sideburns and shoulder-length stringy light brown hair. He also had a tattoo on his right arm of a naked woman with a snake wrapped around her body. The other man had short, wavy brown hair and thought to be in his mid-20s. He was anywhere from 155 to 170 pounds and between 5'9 and 5'11.
Unfortunately, through the investigation, those 2 males were never identified.
Detectives also think the 3 were in a 4-door 1973 to 74 red Cadillac with a white vinyl top. But that's not the only vehicle of interest in this case. That same morning, a 1985 tractor-trailer cab was hot-wired and stolen from an area nearby. It had a decal on the door that said Younger Brothers and enough gas for 1,500 miles.
Whether it's connected or whether it's a coincidence, right now we don't know.
Investigators stopped drivers along the interstate the next morning, trying to track down any clues from people who drove that route. Maybe they saw something out of the ordinary. A bulletin put out to law enforcement at the time said the 2 men that Sharp was last seen with at the truck stop were also seen walking along the I-64 off-ramp at the St. Albans exit around 5 o'clock the morning she was found dead. Investigators said witnesses saw one of the men carrying a suitcase that belonged to the owner of the stolen truck.
There are some details in this case that we want to keep close, that we don't want out there, because obviously that's how we know if somebody's telling us the truth.
Sharp was not sexually assaulted, but deputies do still have the clothing she was wearing when she was found, hopeful that there may be DNA left behind that wasn't able to be gathered as evidence in that pre-DNA era. Sheriff Bobby Eggleton says they're determined to get these items tested.
Back in the early 80s when this girl was killed, there was no DNA. We didn't know anything about that kind of technology. Now, every day the advancements can open up other doors and we can solve these cases.
150 people were interviewed in this case, and they're in the process of tracking some of those people back down and talking to them again.
There were persons of interest that were listed in the initial investigation, and we have also developed other persons of interest in going back through the case file and going back through evidence.
A new approach in hopes of closing this case once and for all.
The Sheriff's Department has not forgotten about Linda Sharp, and we're going to do everything in our power for the family members and for the friends to get some closure on this.
If you have any information about the investigation, call the Putnam County Sheriff's Office at 304-586-0256. You can read much more about this case right now on our website, WCHSTV.com. We have full news reports from deep inside the archives that you can pour through yourself. If you've got a cold case you'd like to see covered, email coldcases@WCHSTV.com. Reporting in the studio, Leslie Rubin, Eyewitness News.